Before the documentary begins, I would like to brief in a few lines on the title Sumerian Kings, The Forbidden Origins of Civilization. They say the dawn of civilization began in the fertile lands between two rivers. But what if that dawn hid something far darker? Beneath the sands of ancient Mesopotamia lie the ruins of temples older than Egypt's pyramids, tablets carved with stories that defy everything we know about human history. The Sumerians, a mysterious people who appeared out of nowhere, built the first cities, invented writing, law, and kingship. Yet their origins remain an unsolved riddle. Who were they? Where did their knowledge come from? And why did their kings claim to rule under the orders of gods who descended from the heavens? Before history began, before empires rose, there was Sumer. And what it left behind may rewrite the story of how humanity began. Before we uncover the truth buried beneath these ancient ruins, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Join us as we bring forgotten civilizations back to life, one mystery at a time. Let us begin the complete documentary on Sumerian kingdom. The birth of Sumer was not gradual, nor did it arise from scattered tribes learning slowly to farm. It appeared suddenly as though civilization itself had been summoned from the dust. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in what would one day be called Mesopotamia, the first true cities rose out of the marshy plains, vast networks of canals, temples, and walls. Eridu, Uruk, Lagash, and Ur became the beating heart of a new human order. Before them, there was no writing, no organized government, no monumental architecture. And yet, almost overnight, the Sumerians built the foundation of everything that would follow. They mastered irrigation, turning floods into fortune, transforming wasteland into golden fields of barley. They designed intricate systems of water management and trade routes that connected their world to distant lands. Their cities were not mere clusters of huts, but complex societies ruled by priests and kings who managed the flow of both water and power. Their most revolutionary creation was writing. In small clay tablets impressed with wedge-shaped marks, the Sumerians gave humanity its first permanent voice. These records chronicled daily life, grain rations, laws, prayers, transactions. But beneath their practicality lay something profound. Memory. For the first time, human thought could be preserved, ideas could travel beyond death, and history itself could exist. With writing came order, with order came law, and with law came the concept of civilization. Religion bound everything together. Every city was believed to be under the protection of a specific deity, and every temple was built to honor the divine presence that gave life to the land. The ziggurat stood as a bridge between heaven and earth, its steps symbolizing humanity's attempt to reach the gods. The Sumerians lived in awe of these unseen powers, convinced that their rulers were chosen to maintain divine harmony. Kingship, they said, descended from heaven, not as a privilege, but as a responsibility to keep chaos at bay. But behind their progress lay an eerie perfection, a sophistication too advanced for its time. Their understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and urban planning seemed almost impossible for a people emerging from prehistory. The question still echoes through time. How did they know so much so quickly? Perhaps the Sumerians were not the beginning of civilization, but the inheritors of an older, forgotten wisdom. Whatever the truth, the cities of Sumer marked the dawn of human ambition, the moment we ceased to merely survive and began to create. Among the ruins of Sumer, archaeologists discovered a tablet known as the Sumerian King List, a document that defies reason. It records a sequence of rulers stretching back into a mythical past, describing kings who reigned for tens of thousands of years before a catastrophic flood destroyed everything. Alulim of Eridu, 28,800 years. Al-Algar, 36,000 years. En-Men-Luana, 43,200 years. To the modern mind, these numbers are absurd. But to the ancient Sumerians, they were sacred truth, the chronicles of a world where gods and men coexisted. The King List tells of kingship descending from heaven to Eridu, the first city. It suggests that the institution of kingship was not a human invention, but a divine gift, a system given to control the chaos of the world. These early kings were not merely political leaders. They were mediators between realms, carrying the authority of celestial beings. When the flood came, the same flood echoed in the tales of Noah and Atrahasis. Kingship vanished, only to return after the waters receded. This cycle of destruction and renewal hints at a forgotten epoch, a civilization erased and reborn. Historians often dismiss these accounts as mythology, yet fragments of truth hide behind every legend. The precision of the King List, its detailed succession of dynasties, and its consistency across tablets suggest that at least some of it was rooted in real events. Perhaps the long reigns symbolize eras of divine rule. Or perhaps they conceal something even stranger, a lost age of knowledge and longevity now beyond human reach. One name stands above them all: Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. His story transcends history, echoing through the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest surviving works of literature. In it, he seeks immortality, driven by the fear of death and the loss of divine connection. Through Gilgamesh, the Sumerians explored humanity's eternal struggle, the desire to overcome mortality and reclaim the wisdom of the gods. His epic blurs the line between myth and reality, suggesting that the kings of old were both human and something more. The King List, the temples, and the stories all point to one conclusion: the Sumerian kings were more than rulers. They were symbols of a forgotten covenant between heaven and earth, a relationship that shaped the destiny of humankind. But such divine favor never lasts. As the Sumerians reached higher, the gods they worshipped began to drift away, and the golden age of divine kingship gave way to the shadows of decline. The Sumerians believed that their gods once walked among them, teaching wisdom, law, and the secrets of creation. But as human cities grew louder, as ambition replaced reverence, the balance between heaven and earth began to fracture. The ancient texts describe a divine council. Gods gathered in secret, their patience with humanity exhausted. Mankind had become too numerous, too restless, too proud. Their noise disturbed the gods' peace. The decision was made to cleanse the earth. The story unfolds in the Epic of Atrahasis, where one god, Enki, defies the decree of destruction. He whispers to Atrahasis, warning him of the flood to come. Atrahasis builds a vessel, preserving life through the storm that follows. When the waters finally recede, humanity emerges into a new world, humbled, diminished, but alive. The gods, regretful yet resolute, swear that such a flood will never come again. For centuries, these tales were dismissed as mythology. Then, deep in the soil of ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists uncovered sediment layers of silt and clay, physical evidence of a massive flood around 2900 BCE. This discovery blurred the line between legend and reality. Could it be that the flood was not symbolic but historical? And if so, what knowledge was lost beneath those waters? The flood marked the end of an age when gods and men coexisted. The old kings vanished, their divine favor gone. The survivors rebuilt, but something fundamental had changed. The world had become mortal again, a place of toil, suffering, and struggle. The temples were rebuilt, but the gods no longer spoke. Humanity was alone, left to rule itself under the faint memory of divine instruction. The Sumerians rebuilt their cities, restoring what they could, but the echoes of the flood lingered. In every prayer and ritual there was a trace of longing, a yearning to reconnect with the lost world of the gods. This longing shaped their art, their literature, their very sense of purpose. The flood was not just a natural disaster, it was a cosmic separation, the moment when humanity was exiled from paradise. And from that day forward, every civilization that followed, Babylon, Egypt, Greece, would carry the memory of that divine departure, always striving to rebuild what was once lost. From the ruins of Sumer rose ideas that would define humanity forever. The Sumerians were the architects of order. They mapped the skies, divided time, codified law, and built the first frameworks of governance. Their number system, based on 60, became the backbone of timekeeping. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. Their temples were aligned with celestial bodies, reflecting an understanding of astronomy centuries ahead of its time. They saw life as a reflection of the cosmos, a mirror of divine design. Every field, every canal, every law was a reenactment of the cosmic order they believed the gods had established. Their mythology shaped how they viewed the universe, a delicate balance between light and dark, chaos and order, heaven and earth. To disrupt that balance was to invite disaster. Their legal systems were revolutionary. The Code of Ur-Nammu, one of the world's oldest known legal codes, predates Hammurabi's by centuries. It established principles of justice, fairness, and restitution, the earliest attempt to bring morality into governance. Their schools trained scribes, their markets fostered trade, and their cities thrived as centers of art, music, and literature. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the laments for fallen cities, and hymns to gods like Inanna and Enlil all carried a profound understanding of the human condition, our struggle between ambition and humility, but their knowledge extended beyond law and art. They mapped the stars, tracked planetary movements, and charted agricultural cycles with astonishing precision. To the Sumerians, the heavens were not distant. They were alive, a grand mechanism whose rhythm dictated every season and fate. Modern science owes much to their obsession with order and observation. The legacy of Sumer lives in every civilization that followed. Babylon inherited its astronomy and mathematics. Egypt borrowed its architecture and theology. Even the biblical stories of Eden, the flood, and the Tower of Babel trace their roots to Sumerian myths. In many ways, the Sumerians were not just the first civilization. They were the blueprint for civilization itself. Yet, with all their wisdom, the Sumerians understood something we still struggle to grasp: that knowledge without balance leads to ruin. Every empire that came after them repeated their cycle: creation, power, corruption, collapse. The legacy of the Sumerian mind is both a gift and a warning, a reminder that human greatness always walks hand in hand with human folly. The Sumerian civilization did not end in fire, but in silence. The rivers shifted, trade routes vanished, and the once great cities were buried by the dust of time. The temples of Ur and Eridu stood empty, their ziggurats eroded by wind and memory. Yet even in ruin, they whispered a message, a lesson carved into the tablets they left behind. Those tablets spoke of destiny and downfall. They revealed a truth the Sumerians themselves seemed to understand, that civilization is a fragile gift, not a right. Their kings, once seen as divine, had become flawed and mortal. Greed, war, and pride corroded the harmony they once upheld. The gods withdrew not out of malice but disappointment. Humanity, entrusted with wisdom, had turned that wisdom into weaponry. Each empire that followed Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, Assyria, repeated the same pattern. They rose with vision and fell with arrogance, and every fall echoed the warning first written in Sumerian clay: when kings forget the heavens, the earth will remind them. The Sumerians were not merely recording their history. They were preserving a prophecy, one that would play out again and again across time. Their message was not about gods or punishment, but about balance. They believed that every kingdom, no matter how powerful, must remain humble before the laws of the universe. The flood that once washed away the world was both literal and symbolic, a cleansing of pride. And though their cities crumbled, their wisdom endured, etched in clay, waiting for rediscovery. When archaeologists unearthed the first tablets in the 19th century, the world was stunned. The language of Sumer, silent for over 4,000 years, spoke again. Through it, humanity rediscovered its own beginnings, the roots of writing, law, mathematics, and kingship. The forgotten kingdom of the Sumerian kings had not vanished. It had simply been waiting for us to listen. In the end, their greatest message was not about their gods or their inventions, but about us. The Sumerians understood that power is temporary, but wisdom eternal. They saw that civilizations rise and fall not because of fate, but because of the choices they make. Their story began with kings who claimed to rule by divine right, and ended with a people who realized that the true divine lies not in power, but in understanding. The sands of Mesopotamia may have swallowed their cities, but not their truth. Civilization began with the Sumerians, and their warning still stands. Remember where we came from? Or history will make us remember the hard way. Long after their cities turned to dust and their ziggurats crumbled into the earth, the whispers of the Sumerian kings still echo beneath the Mesopotamian sands. Their tablets remain, silent but unbroken, carrying secrets the world has only begun to decode. They were the first to write, the first to rule, the first to dream of eternity, and perhaps the first to fall victim to their own creation. Yet, their legacy lingers like a shadow across history, reminding us that the line between myth and truth is far thinner than we dare believe. As archaeologists continue to unearth the relics of their forgotten world, new clues suggest that the story of civilization's birth is far from complete. If Sumer was only the beginning, then what ancient power came before it? And how much of that forgotten knowledge still lies buried beneath the shifting sands, waiting to rewrite everything we think we know about our past?